Witness may be seated. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
You may take your seat. Please speak loudly and clearly.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ma'am, please say your name and spell your name.
Katherine Magbanua, Katherine Magbanua.
I see that you're in jail clothes. Are you currently in custody?
Yes, ma'am.
What are you in custody for?
For murder?
Are you doing a sentence for murder?
Yes, ma'am.
You were convicted of murder?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that the murder of Dan Markel?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have a trial in your case?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you testify?
Yes, ma'am.
You testified on your own behalf?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And when you testified, were you truthful with the jury?
No, ma'am. I was not.
Did you take the same oath that you just took today in your own trial?
Yes, ma'am.
What was your defense when you were tried?
That I had nothing to do with it.
All right. That we got it right in reference to Charlie Adelson and we got it right in reference to the killers,
Yes,
but you
ma'am.
weren't in the middle.
Yes, ma'am.
Was that true?
No, ma'am, it was not.
Were you in the middle?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
And didn't you also testify in the trial in which Sigfredo Garcia was convicted of murder?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
And what was his defense?
That he had nothing to do with it.
That we got it right in reference to Charlie Adelson and we got it right in reference to the killers, but he had nothing to do with it,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
Objection, Your Honor. B.
Overruled, Ms. Calvin. Make sure you use any questions.
And was that defense truthful?
No, ma'am, it was not.
So Sigfredo Garcia was involved.
Yes, ma'am, he was.
So why tell the truth now?
I believe that the truth needed to come out now so that the family can get some type of closure.
Why didn't the truth need to come out last year or the year before or the year before that?
I was trying to defend myself.
You were trying to get off.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you think you'd be successful in your trial with that defense?
I thought so.
Has anyone promised you anything for your testimony here today?
No, ma'am.
Weren't you originally offered immunity for cooperation in this case?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
But you didn't take us up on that
No, ma'am, I didn't.
because you thought you could get off completely.
Yes,
Right.
ma'am.
And now you're doing a life sentence.
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Did Charlie Adelson threaten to harm you if you told the truth?
No, ma'am, he didn't threaten me.
Did anybody threaten you to keep your silence?
No, ma'am.
Did anybody promise you anything if you remained silent all these years?
I wasn't promised anything, but I wasn't promised anything.
Go ahead, finish your thought. You weren't promised anything, but what?
I thought everything was going to be okay.
You thought you'd be acquitted.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so did you know Dan Markel?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Did you have any personal beef with him?
No, ma'am, I did not.
What was your motivation for becoming a part of this murder plot?
Financially.
So not as a favor to Charlie Adelson?
Objection, Your Honor.
What is the objection?
Leading.
I'll rephrase it, Your Honor. Was it a favor to Charlie Adelson?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
Okay, but your primary motivation was not favor to Charlie Adelson?
Well, yes, ma'am, it was. And financially.
All right, because you were going to get paid for
Yes.
your part?
Yes,
How much
ma'am.
did you get paid?
I don't know the exact amount.
What was your relationship to Charlie Adelson?
He was my ex-boyfriend.
When did you meet him?
I believe that was in 2013.
Do you know what month?
Has to be around September.
Can you point him out and describe what he's wearing?
He's sitting over there with a blue jacket and a blue tie.
Let the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant.
The record will reflect.
Show you what I marked as states 48. Recognize this exhibit?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
How do you recognize it?
That's when we went to Key West.
Is that a fair and accurate photo of you and Charlie Adelson?
Yes, ma'am, it
Is
is.
that when the two of you were taken, when the two of you were dating?
Yes, ma'am.
Judge, at this time I'd ask to move into evidence states 48.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
48 is admitted.
Do we have that for publication? So was this photo taken before or after the murder?
Before.
Who came up with the idea to kill Dan Markel?
Charlie.
So Sigfredo Garcia didn't come up with the idea?
No, ma'am, he did not.
Luis Rivera didn't come up with the idea?
No, ma'am, he did not.
When did the defendant first bring this idea up to you?
My first recollection was around Halloween of 2013.
Around Halloween or on the actual?
On Halloween, yes, ma'am.
All right. What's your recollection of how that came up?
We were at a Halloween party in Lincoln Road, and right before we were about to go, he got in the car with me and he asked me a question.
What was the question?
Do you know anybody that can harm someone?
And did you know anybody that could harm someone?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Who was that?
Sigfredo.
And at the time, what was your relationship with Sigfredo?
Wasn't the best.
But he was the father of your children, right?
Yes, ma'am. He is.
So were you dating both men at this time, or were you only dating Charlie?
No, I was only dating Charlie.
Okay. And so he meaning the defendant, initially said, "Do you know anyone that could harm someone?" Was he aware of your connection to Sigfredo Garcia when he made that statement?
Not that I know of. No, ma'am.
Did you suggest Sigfredo Garcia at that time to the defendant?
No, ma'am.
What did you say?
I just said yes and kind of left it alone.
All right. Did it go any further than that at that time?
Not that night. I don't
Did
believe
you
so.
know who he wanted harmed at that time?
No, ma'am.
All right. Had you become aware during the course of your relationship with him that he had some kind of issue going on with his sister's ex-husband?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
What did you learn about that?
He was just stating that his mom and dad was stressed, and that his sister was having problems with her husband and custody of her 2 children.
And when did you learn that the person that the defendant wanted harmed was this ex-husband of the sister?
I believe later on.
All right. And when did you learn the name Dan Markel?
It wasn't until, I don't know if it was on my trial or when Sigfredo got arrested.
Okay, so even when he was killed, you didn't know the name of the person that was being killed?
Yes, I never knew his name.
How did the defendant refer to this person, if not by the name Dan or Danny Markel?
Wendy's husband.
Okay. So you knew that the person that was going to be initially harmed was Wendy's husband?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you knew that there were issues, or what did you know about the beef with him?
He painted this picture that this was a terrible man and making his family go through a lot custody-wise with his sister.
All right, and when he would say these things to you, is it in the context of his mom specifically or his family in general?
I believe it was more towards his mom.
Meaning what?
That his mom hasn't been sleeping, his mom is not eating. I know his dad wasn't was in the best health either, but he would refer to his mom a lot.
All right. And the reason she wasn't sleeping or eating, did that have to do with this ex-husband of Wendy?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever tell the defendant who it was that was going to be doing the job?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Why didn't you say the name Sigfredo to Charlie Adelson?
I always referred to each other as my friend. Neither one of them wanted to really hear each other's names.
And why is that?
Because Sigfredo was the father of my kids, and I was dating him at that time. I was dating Charlie at that time.
Okay, so Sigfredo Garcia, did he have strong feelings about the defendant?
Yes, he didn't like him.
All right, and is that because you were dating him?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And vice versa, you're not going to talk about the child's father with the new boyfriend either?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So is it true then that you were sort of walling these two off from each other before the issue of the murder and the conspiracy ever even arose?
Yes, ma'am.
And did that pattern continue throughout the murder conspiracy?
Yes, ma'am, it did.